Just always before I speak hello. I want to make sure that I acknowledge that we are meeting on Awabakal land and acknowledge our traditional custodians of this land. And thank you so much for organising everything for me. I walked in today and I said, do you have some butcher's paper? And he was like, why do you want butcher's paper? Like, I looked really nervous. I said, I was just going to draw something. And in 3 minutes, he put up a deck for me and created it. So in a minute, you're going to see that. But I wanted today just to really informally, I guess, share my story. Like, this is what Startup Stories is, and just sort of tell about my why. And I love that we've got a real diverse mixture in the room. So for those watching online, I have my colleagues, so fellow midwives, so that's really exciting for me, but also other startups who are probably at the beginning or, in an established area of their startup journey. So I'm happy I said as well, when I came in, I'm very transparent. I'm very, ask me anything. If you're thinking during my talk, I'd love to know that, please, we've got time for questions. Nothing's off. You can just ask me absolutely anything. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about why I started BirthBeat, what my journey's been like, and talk a little bit around the incubator, the accelerator, that experience for me, because I also think that's really helpful. And not everyone in the room sort of understands this world. I think startup is just such a buzzword at the moment, and that's a great thing for Australia, but there's so much in our community that probably doesn't really understand what that means. And then I'm going to just share, I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago, what did I wish I had have known, and share that with you. So I'm sort of calling it my 5 hacks, and I'll share those with you. And then a quick little diagram, and I guess that's what keeps me aligned. So I will start by saying at BirthBeat, we have a really strong, and when I say we as well, it's still only me. But when you start your own business and you're talking about yourself, and I'm a solo founder, so I started BirthBeat on my own, I realised, particularly when you're talking to investors and you're talking to big companies in Sydney and things, I've just automatically started saying we and talking about the team. This is it, this is the team. But what I'm super excited to say is next week we're employing our first team member. So we've got a permanent staff member coming on and joining BirthBeat, which is hugely exciting. So when I'm saying we, it's just me. So BirthBeat, I guess, the reason BirthBeat started, so my why is that I was 36 weeks pregnant with Polly. So picture me at 82 kilos. That's when I stopped weighing myself. And our local maternity unit, the private maternity unit in our town, closed its doors. And I'm very pro-public health. I've always worked for public health since I was 19. I've always had a job working in hospitals. And I was planning on birthing Polly at our public hospital where I worked, but the antenatal classes at the private hospital were really good at the time. And I was wanting my husband to go to those classes. That maternity unit closed its doors with absolutely no community consultation. And I guess that's kind of when the fire was lit in my belly around BirthBeat. And I started to research, and I started to see that in mainly rural, regional and remote Australia, maternity units were closing weekly, monthly, all across Australia. 41% of Australian maternity units have closed their doors in the last 15 years, mainly in rural, regional and remote Australia. Mona Vale Hospital in Manly are going to close in the next few weeks, so you'll probably hear a lot more about it, because you hear so much more about it when it's happening to big cities and impacting larger populations. Theodore Hospital is also about to close its maternity unit, but it's got a population of about 6,000 people, so you're not going to hear about it as much. So those women that are going to birth or were planning on birthing at Theodore now have to travel another 2 hours to Rockhampton. So when you say that to a labouring woman, you now have to travel another 2 hours. That makes a big impact on communities. So essentially, I whinged about it for a while. That's what it looked like. I complained, and my husband's a very practical kind of man. And he said, I'm kind of sick of hearing you whinge about it. Why don't you do something about it? And that's when I very naively decided to start a business with absolutely no business background. So registered midwife, emergency CNC, all clinical. I've always just been a nurse and a midwife. I shouldn't say just a nurse and a midwife, but that's been absolutely my clear focus, and it's what I always thought I would do in life. You know, I absolutely love being a registered nurse and a midwife. And then I said, yeah, why don't I? And just started in Tamworth. Other mums were telling other mums, hey, there's this woman, she's doing private antenatal classes and they're really good. And I was hosting them in our house. I'm an extreme extrovert, if you haven't worked that out yet. My husband's an extreme introvert. So each Saturday and Sunday when these strangers were coming to our house and sitting around our living room, he didn't cope with that for very long. So very soon we had to rent a space, and we rented a space in Tamworth at a local gym. And each month we were just teaching our classes on a weekend, never marketed it, never sort of formalised the process. We did this for about 5 years, and every now and then I would take myself off and do a bit more education and learn things and get really excited and be like, right now I want to implement that in the classes. What I didn't realise is what I was creating that was so unique is that BirthBeat is no opinion. So I realise I'm talking to a room where there's possibly not as many parents as when I'm normally talking to rooms, because there's a very young sort of demographic here in the room. But as a mother and as a father, women get really sick of the opinion that is imparted in them. It's like the minute a woman is pregnant, the community feel like they can start to share their opinions or even sort of touch them or, you know, rub their belly and things like that. And I sort of always think, wow, what is it about this pregnancy that the community then think, or particularly health professionals start to impart their opinions on these women? And it can be an incredibly overwhelming time in your life. So at BirthBeat, we stand up at the beginning of every class and we say, this is not about me. This is not my journey. This has nothing to do with me. This is your journey. And I'm not going to share any of my opinions with you. Everything I'm going to share with you is evidence-based. We review our content every 12 months. I'm learning stuff, and I will share that with my women and their support people. And we show them what birth is going to look, sound, and feel like. There's no glossing over areas because, oh, they don't need to know that, you know. We actually really get into the nitty-gritty of the content, and we show the support people physically what their role is. It's that, and that was so unique and sort of my passion, that then month after month the classes were booking out in Tamworth. Again, remember, no business experience. And we had a couple that came from Cobar. So that's about 500 kilometres from Tamworth if you don't know Tamworth. So it's a long way to travel for an antenatal class. They paid for 2 nights accommodation. They weren't birthing in Tamworth, they're actually birthing in Dubbo. And I speak to my women all the time, and I was kind of like, why are you here? And they said, oh, there wasn't really anything else, and we heard that BirthBeat's the best. And I was thinking, 500 kilometres they've had to travel for their antenatal classes. Thank God they did, because they actually went into prem labour and didn't get to Dubbo. So they felt really prepared and they actually enjoyed their experience. But then the next month, a couple came from Sydney. And that kind of overwhelmed me, actually, from a business point of view. I was like, I know you've got options in Sydney. Like, you know, why are you here? And their sister had done BirthBeat a year before, and she said, well, we heard BirthBeat's the best. And so they came home for a weekend to come to BirthBeat. And at that stage, like, that's where I think it's important from a business point of view. That's where I started to have to get a bit more, what have we created here? Like, I had 2 young children. I was working full time at that time, and I was also managing our local maternity unit. So personally, I was pretty strung out. And I looked at selling the business. I was like, I'm overwhelmed. I can't keep up with this demand. At that stage, we were still doing no advertising. That was all just word of mouth. And then we looked at franchising, and that just creates another whole beast. How do I make sure that, so at BirthBeat, our vision is to better the birth experience for all, and our values, one of our main values, is we are determined to deliver. And what that sort of means for me is quality and ensuring that the content is just 100% and that the experience is 100% for the woman and her support person. And I felt like if I franchised that and another midwife taught the class somewhere else, I don't, and I will acknowledge that I'm a control freak, but I don't have that sense of control over the quality and the quality experience. And in teaching antenatal classes, you have to be so sure that it's not about you, and you can't ensure that if you employ someone else. Like if they have a bad day or they have a personal experience and then that is imparted on that woman, or that negative energy is on that woman in the antenatal class, that was what's really important to me. So I love that I've got Zach here in the audience. I went away and I read a book and I learned how to write a lean canvas, and I didn't even know what that was. And so it's like you spend 20 minutes, and a lot of you would have done this already, you spend 20 minutes with a piece of paper and you talk about what your potential business model is, your goal and what you want to achieve, talk about advantages, disadvantages, what that model looks like. And I entered it into what's called the Commonwealth Bank Innovation Award. This was in 2017 and we were the national winner. So Commonwealth Bank gave me $10,000, flew me to Sydney, spent a few days in their innovation lab and looking at user experience. And I had done the first iteration of taking BirthBeat online. That was when we decided that this is the answer to get this out to rural and regional women. We had to look at scalability, we had to look at access, we had to look at all of these concepts. And online to me was the answer. And it was pretty great for me to sort of go, oh, well, someone else thinks that this is a good idea as well, and probably from a business perspective. I had done the first iteration of the online module, and we went and we sat in Commonwealth Bank and did the UX. And if you've never experienced this user experience, particularly for around websites and online, is you sit in the room with a big image of your website up on the cameras there, and then someone else who doesn't know you, this is what was really important, doesn't know you, has no association with you, because if people like you, they're going to tell you it's a great idea. Yeah, BirthBeat's a great idea, people are going to buy it. This was mid-2017. People who didn't know me went into a room next door. So 3 people went through my website and the offering, and I think the comments were like, it looks sleazy and salesy. She looks like she's trying to sell a weight loss program, was the comment that came from one pregnant woman. That was about my website. I was like, oh, you know, and you've really kind of got to cut me deep. Then another dad, an expecting father, came in and he pointed out, like, it's when you know your content so well, it's hard to take that subjective view. Nowhere on my website did it say that I was a registered midwife. So I talked about, you know, what I do and why I do it, what the content involves. I was like, good point. So we actually took the website down then, well, not the website, but we took the online offering down, and I joined a local incubator. So again, some people in the room are sort of saying, so what is an incubator? And an incubator it's called the Smart Region Incubator in Tamworth, and it's a place where you can go and access business support. We have an expert in residence. And when I joined that incubator, that was when my eyes were open to how to actually run a business. So for 5 years, I'd really been stumbling along in Tamworth. I'd done my first profit and loss statement, and again, I didn't know what that was. Like, I just Googled everything, literally Googled everything to start this business. And my husband said, you're spending a lot of time on BirthBeat, are you making any money? I was like, I don't really know. Like, I'm sure that's not, you know, 5 years I'd been doing this, but I just loved what I was doing so much. And I said, you need to do a profit and loss statement. My husband's an engineer, he's a very science analytical brain. So I did one, and I worked out that we had made $2,500 profit for that financial year, and I was so excited. I rang him, he was working in Inverell at the time. I was like, hey Roscoe, we've made $2,500, I just did a P&L statement, like I was all, and he was like, cool, what'd you pay yourself? What? Well, in terms of wages, what did you pay yourself before that $2,500 profit? Oh, and I hadn't paid myself anything. I hadn't paid myself for 5 years. And so then we worked out on average hours that I was spending on BirthBeat. After my hospital job, I was paying myself 18 cents an hour. So, you know, like it's just, that was kind of my journey that got me to where we are. I joined the incubator, and then I met someone at the incubator that said, hey, you should look at the HCF Catalyst program. And that was powered by Slingshot. That's why I gave a big wave to Lauren there, because that has, again, and like, pardon the pun, been the catalyst for us for growth. So I spent 3 months going to Sydney. I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old, Polly and Theodore. So any mothers in the room know the huge challenge that was. I flew to Sydney each Sunday night and home on the Thursday night. So I didn't see my children for 4 days a week. Like, it was full on, but it was the best thing, because like, they call them accelerators, but that's because you're full-time in the business. You have people like Zach, you have these incredible experts from all around the world coming and teaching you how to grow and accelerate your business. And the growth we experienced in that 12 weeks, for me personally, but also for the business, was phenomenal, because I was fully committed. So I actually, you know, like, and as bad as it sounds, I clocked off from being a mum. I just sort of said to my husband, I need to do this. And so spent absolutely dedicated 12 weeks. I think I was the most green in the group, you know, and I can say that now because, again, I knew nothing around business and online and things like that. But I just absolutely immersed myself in that 12 weeks, and it made all the difference. So after the HCF Catalyst program, we came out and we went on Shark Tank, which was great in terms of public exposure and awareness of the product. And really, I think that kind of takes us up to where we are now. I'm now out with 8 weeks out of my paid role with Hunter New England, so I'm full-time on BirthBeat, which was personally a huge leap, you know, to kiss goodbye to that. I think it was 19 years I'd been with New South Wales Health. So to say goodbye to that reliable paycheck is a very frightening time. But I think also, when we were talking about what I was going to talk about today and talking about the Australian startup scene, I think compared to the American, there's this real, like, yeah, go in, you know, go in, guns a-blazing, quit your job. Personally, I don't actually share that opinion, and I'm only sharing my personal humble opinion. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that don't agree with this. We well and truly bootstrapped BirthBeat until 2018. You know, any spare money I had, I invested into more dolls or more content or more classes or more training for myself. And I actually think that that was a really valuable way to go for me, because I built the first MVP. Like, I'm not in any way a software engineer. It was a third-party platform. It was drag and drop. But I taught myself how to do that just on Google at night, like how to make an online learning platform. It took hours and hours of work, but now I have an engineer in Brisbane, and when he's doing something, I can say, no, you know, we don't want to do that. That's, you know, like, it's good to understand your content. It's been a heck of a lot of work, but now I get weekly emails of women who are experiencing BirthBeat or their partners. Like, I get dads emailing me. We had a same-sex couple, so 2 dads in April did our course. Their baby was being born in the States, and they're like, where do 2 American dads living in Sydney who are preparing for the birth of their baby go and prepare for classes? So I guess I focused on rural regional women. Now it's just all parents. We're selling into large corporate organisations where they're putting it in their health and wellbeing package. We've got 2 pilots running at the moment with JobLink, which is an employment agency, and IAG. So they're offering it into their health and wellbeing platforms, and we're on the Thrive, which is the CommBank health and wellbeing platform, and PwC's health and wellbeing platform. So it's like, I love that people are knowing now how important preparing for birth and how important that time is for parents is. So that's kind of me. That's my story. I wanted to quickly put this up. Does anyone have any questions at that stage, or are they happy for me just to keep rabbiting on? This was what I walked in and was going to put on a piece of butcher's paper, which you made look very pretty. But I think this is just kind of like, for me, what keeps me aligned, but also in terms of business, I probably wished I had have understood this concept 6 years ago, and we would have grown at a much faster rate and got this. When I say grow at a much faster rate, all that means to me is more women get to experience this. More women get to go into birth empowered. So you've got to have, when I say you've got to, that's, I guess, in my opinion, it's bigger than me. Like, BirthBeat's not, you know, this isn't about me being some sort of financial success, but I appreciate now that I need to make money for this to be able to get out to more and more women, and that's okay. It took a long time for me, particularly as a midwife. You know, we've spent so much time serving and sort of that role of serving women. It's okay for me to be profitable. It's okay for me to make some money out of this, because that just means we grow and we get it out to more women. So when you're sort of talking about, and this is like what I call my sweet spot. So here's the midwife teaching you about finding the sweet spot. Not that, you know, not that kind of sweet spot. What you love. It's got to be something that you love. Don't, like, I met so many people at the accelerator again that were like, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do blockchain, and we're going to do this. And I was like, oh, wow, why did you get into that? Why do you love it so much? I don't, it's just going to make us money. Do you know what I mean? Like, you burn out pretty quickly if it's not something that each day you get up and you love. And I was really, really lucky to visit Atlassian a few weeks ago, and I didn't meet the amazing founders. But somebody said to me that every day they still get up, they still come into the office because they love what they do. It's not about that they're a billions of dollar company now so that they're sitting back on their yacht. They love what they do, so they show up to work because they just, there's that love, and you need that love. Or again, a lot of this is just my humble opinion. People might disagree. It's going to be something the world actually needs. If you just create this product that's going to sit on a shelf that no one really needs, it's not going to be a long-term, really think about, is this something that people actually need, and test it. Test that market. Again, mum and dad are always going to tell me that BirthBeat's a great idea. They're my biggest fans. My father actually asked me a while ago if he could have a few cards, and I said, yeah, sure, why? He said, because I'm going to offer them to pregnant women. I was like, well, a 75-year-old man walking down Peel Street in Tamworth, handing out cards to women he thinks are pregnant. I was like, no, I don't think that that's a safe marketing strategy for us, thanks, Dad, but I love the passion. And what you get paid for. It is okay to want to make money, particularly, I will say, as females. So when I show this to men, it's like, yeah, of course, like you need to make money. But there's this squirminess and this sort of uncomfortable feeling around women really valuing what their product, their time, their IP is. It is okay to make money, and it's so important for health professionals as well. I've started doing some coaching for health professionals and other midwives who are looking to have their private business, but feeling uncomfortable about asking or working out what they're worth and what their value is. So that's really important. And what you do well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love teaching childbirth classes. I'm good at it. I'm a good midwife, and I can own that now and say that with just saying, it takes a while for that to be validated, and it was probably, years of emails and things that I finally accepted, oh yeah, I'm actually pretty good at this. But once you let yourself accept that, it's like this sense of freedom that you go, right, well, let's get this out there to the world. So that was what I kind of wanted to just create and share with you. But in terms of my hacks, so to speak, I just wrote 5 things because I just think it's really important. They're really, really brief. Number 1 is be curious, okay? And a genuine curiosity. What I see, and I'm going to talk here because this is probably more particular in the startup world, but I think the health professionals will also be able to relate to this, is that and again, I spent 3 months in the accelerator in Sydney, and I met so many people, and I'd be like, oh, hi, in the tea room, what are you doing here? Or they would ask you, and in the time that you're talking to them, and I'm going to look at Lauren so that I don't make anyone else feel uncomfortable, but you could see while you're talking, they're going like this, and in their mind, they're thinking, I'm just preparing my 30-second pitch, or what am I going to tell her? What's my gaddy pitch? Like, stop that. Genuinely listen with curiosity, because that is when you will really learn. That is when you will go, oh, that's really interesting. Why are you doing it like that? And it's almost a little bit, and I guess in health as well, like, remove the ego where we assume, because we are creating this product, that we know what's best. And that genuine curiosity has helped me to learn and grow, I think, so much more. And where it works particularly well is when it starts to get to sales. So I will go in now to a boardroom and say hello and talk a little bit about the BirthBeat product and say, how do you think that can help you? And you let them talk and you genuinely listen. And before you know it, they're telling you why they want to buy BirthBeat before you've even had to stand up and go through your deck. So really, it's that curiosity. I really think that for me personally has been such a way to help BirthBeat grow, because I have been genuinely curious about everyone else. I've written, works incredibly well in sales. Automate it. That was my next thing. So when we were with the HCF Catalyst group with Slingshot, another company came in and talked to us. They were called Table, and they had this theory that if they did anything in the office 4 times, they worked out a way to automate it. And that really resonated with me. And I've sort of personally become like the queen of automation. If I do something 4 times, if I answer an email question, I now have a template for it. If I, in terms of my finances, everything's on HubDoc, Xero, it's all it's all automated because I've been able to deliver this quality product now. We've been online for nearly 12 months. We've had considerable sales and it's just been me. Do you know what I mean? So everything is automated. Outsource it. And I know that there are some mums in the room. So I will say, stop thinking that you have to do it all. Particularly for women, we have this theory of, got to be seen to be doing it all or feel like we should be doing it all. The moment that I let go of the whole mum guilt or what do other people think of me, the people that would make negative comments or maybe little snide comments like, oh, you're back to Sydney again today, are you, Edwina? Poor Theodore. I was like, those kind of comments, it's not even like they're not coming from a cruel place, but people don't realise how those words can impact a mother. After I didn't care, and I was kind of like, I know my child's loved, I know I'm a good mum, I'm a very present mum when I'm home, I appreciate I'm a working mum, but we also have a full-time live-in au pair. I have to acknowledge that. I have 2 parents that live in Tamworth and are hugely supportive. I was very excited that HelloFresh has just started coming to Tamworth. And I have a house cleaner because I've stopped thinking that I have to do everything and I can focus more on my business so that I'm a more present mum and I'm not thinking about cleaning the house or what to prepare for dinner every night because that was making me stressed. So outsource in your business life, but also in your personal life. If you are feeling like you can't do it all, that's okay. No one's doing it all. It's just people aren't honest about it. Number 4 is follow up. Okay, so the amount of people that I have had approach me since Shark Tank, and they're like, hey, can you send me an email? I'm like, no, I'm not gonna send you an email. If you want something from me, you follow me up. Like you have to get sort of almost really like put on your armor and get this thick skin. But everyone I meet, if they offer me an opportunity or they offer me something, I will follow them up. So we just filmed a cesarean section in Tamworth and we were just talking about that with the midwives. And after that, I hand wrote a note to every clinician that was involved and delivered a bottle of wine to them to say thank you. I'm sorry if this is going onto YouTube, but in business, don't be a dick. Be a good person. Be thankful when people share their time and share their experiences. It's not all about what you're going to get at that time, but if you are prepared to give, and follow up and personalize things and say, well, how can I help you? It will come back to you threefold later. It's not always about what are you going to get out of it at the time. And particularly in startups, I see this hunger, which is good, but it's all like take, take, take. And just think about how can you also be giving. And I think that's really important. And then my final one is just test it. It's never going to be perfect. Get it out there, test it in the market. If nobody wants it, that's okay. Pivot, change, test again. And I wrote this, and someone said this to me when I was on the 12-week program, and it just rings true. Have a strong opinion and hold it weekly. Okay? Have a strong opinion about your product and what you want to do, but don't be so focused on that you can't see that nobody wants it. Nobody's buying it. You're not going to make any money or be successful if this is something that nobody wants. They're kind of my 5 hacks. And that's me, really. So I don't know, do you have any questions or? Yes?
Just around the mama guilt stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got any tips for how you deal with that?
Yeah.
You did mention that you've got people around you.
Yes.
Any tips for if you don't have anyone around?
Yeah.
How to kind of deal with that? Because I do that a lot.
Absolutely. And I think personally, I am so lucky to have my parents and I know that, but I had to look at, so what do I need in terms of to not experience that mama guilt? And for me, in terms of my own mental health, and I'm really open about talking this about, I had significant postnatal anxiety with my second child, and as a midwife, everyone was like, how are you challenged? You seem to have it all together. And I think the most important thing is to be honest and talk about it and really ask, well, what serves you well? I know that I need to exercise daily. That's just my little thing. So it's about how I make sure that I've got time to walk for 30 minutes a day. What that looks like, personally, it's hard. But my biggest thing is surrounding myself with people that give me good energy. So there are like people who I consider friends, but at this stage in my life, I'm limiting my time and my exposure to them. And I know that that sounds harsh, but that's about protecting myself. Also with the guilt, and again, it's about sort of exploring mindfulness and how that has helped me, is I acknowledge when I feel guilty, and then I say, is it serving me well? And when I say, is it serving me well, is it serving my business well? Is it serving my family well? Is this guilt serving me well? It's never serving me well. And I tell it to piss off. Like, excuse my language if this is, but do you know what I mean? Like, and I even, as crazy and nutso as it sounds, if I'm sitting at the desk and I get the guilt feeling, I physically, 2 guns, shoot it away, and I swear at it. Like, that's just my, do you know what I mean? It's just my little strategies that work for me. And if you say it out aloud, again, it sounds weird, you know, talking about it now, but you say it out aloud, you clear your mind, and then you get back to work. But acknowledge the guilt and know it's real. Like, mum guilt is real, and it's so hard. And I'm not just mum guilt, there's, you know, parent guilt or any sort of guilt that you can't do it all now. Okay? We can have it all, but we can't have it all now. So just really acknowledging it and asking it to leave, which I know sounds a bit floaty to some people, but that's just the way I operate. Yeah. Pardon?
I'm a bit woo-woo. So
Cool. I talk about asking the universe things, and my husband's like, that doesn't exist. And I was like, well, I believe it does. So, whatever. Anything else?
Thank you for your talk. I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, no worries.
Couple of questions. I'm not from around here. So why are so many maternity wards closing?
Yeah, not a worry.
Secondly, you spoke about when you was looking to franchise, go down that route, you felt like you'd lose, I guess, why people were coming to you. And how do you solve that problem by going online?
Yep. Okay, so the first question around why maternity units are closing, there's 2 reasons, or there's probably several reasons contributing to it. A lot of them were private maternity units. So again, having a baby is a healthy, well, normal physiological process. So hospitals are businesses, and I completely acknowledge that, and they need to make money as well. You will make more money out of someone who is sick or unwell and staying in their beds for a longer amount of time. So if you're a private hospital, in our example of Tamworth, and I'll use that, they closed our maternity unit and replaced it with a rehabilitation unit. So a rehabilitation unit, hospitals make money out of people staying in beds overnight. A rehabilitation unit, you are going to expect to have more nights in a bed than what you would in a maternity unit. So it's far more profitable than having a maternity unit. Plus, we have a critical shortage of midwives, particularly in rural and regional Australia, and that's something that we really need to address, I believe, at a federal level, and they have looked at certain things to try and help that. And as communities get smaller, it makes it more challenging, even in public hospitals, to keep those open if those resources aren't being used. So it's kind of this combination. But in my belief, if we close a maternity unit, the impact on those communities is huge. Women are having, particularly Indigenous women, they have to go off country to birth, which makes a big impact on them culturally. But also women have to leave their properties, their jobs, their other children to go. Like, birth is a big long spectrum. We can't say, we didn't have crystal balls, you're going to birth on the 3rd of July. So these women aren't able to stay at home, they're having to travel long way. So it was kind of that real driver for me. And then what was your question around franchise?
Yeah, just I guess from what you said, the impression I got was that you'd lose, I guess, the reason why people were coming to you for these classes. So in the example you gave about the gay couple, I guess if you was doing that in person, you had to obviously tailor to their needs, get their feedback.
Yes.
How are you solving that?
So my challenge for me with franchise was ensuring that we retained the quality, you know, and that sense of quality, and making sure that the classes were still continued to be delivered without opinion, and it was evidence-based, and it wasn't about, you know, the person delivering the class. So that was why I wanted to sort of, I guess, keep control. The way that we have done it online, and again, I actually, as a midwife, believe that face-to-face is the best experience. But the reality is we have to kind of catch up with, particularly our millennials, that that's not their choice of how they want to consume education. So how we're getting around that in terms of tailoring it and creating that sort of sense of community is that then they have access to, face-to-face if that's what they want. But we also have a closed Facebook group that is regulated by a registered midwife. We're about to get another registered midwife to regulate that so that we can personalise it. But essentially, this is the thing, birth beat is we encompass everything. So it's about making sure that we support the same-sex couples, the donor mums. We support all pathways into parenthood. It might be that you're preparing to adopt, that you're going through the surrogacy. It might be that you're having an obstetric-led birth or a midwifery-led birth or a home birth. What I don't do is promote that I will educate anyone for what's called a free birth. That's the only thing, and I'm very clear about saying that. A free birth is a birth where there's not a health professional there. And that's purely because I don't feel like I could honestly and genuinely support a woman through that. So that's, and I say that and I own that. So birth beat is for all, so those dads, they need the same preparation as, potentially the parents that were in COBA, because birth is still the same process. Yeah, yeah.
How have you got around, I assume you have some degree of insurance?
Yes.
Thinking about the advice in midwives.
Yes. So particularly for online, when you're doing face-to-face, it's really easy to reiterate that this is just general advice and that I am not your care provider. So online, we had to obviously go through the whole legal system. I own the IP to my classes, and when they sign up, they go through a 2-stage consent process in terms of agreeing to the terms and conditions. And the terms and conditions clearly state that I am not giving medical advice, that this is general educational advice, that's for a general population, and that they should always speak to their own care providers. In each module, I reiterate that. People email me all the time and ask me things, and I say, I am not your care provider, I am not your midwife, I cannot put my hands on your body, and I cannot answer those questions. Please speak to, and tell them who they need to speak to. It's just, and my insurance, as you can imagine, is very high, because the minute you say, I'm going to teach online antenatal education, everyone just went, oh my God, so you're going to teach people how to birth online? I was like, it's not about teaching people how to birth, it's about educating people about the birth process. I spoke to, insurance companies that were like, oh, so you're doing home births. I am not doing home births. I had to really clearly say that, because then your insurance premiums just go even further through the roof. So we're for education purposes only.
Can I ask you, how
Yes.
long are your modules?
So all up, there's 8 hours content, and it includes, so they range between 25 to 45 minutes. So I've based it also around all different types of adult learning. So majority of it, yeah.
In online education, it's interesting in your business particularly whether the model is pushed out, because generally it's 12 to 18 minutes.
Yeah. So
do they capture attention longer because it's something which is an inevitable event, therefore it has to
they're about to experience it, but we also, it's very active, so they're up and off the couch. Right. So I had a couple the other day that said to me, and she was lovely, she sent me an email and she said, I was sitting on the couch after work and you said, get up and get off the couch. And my husband actually said, come on, get up. And she was like, I was tired. And he said, we paid $300 for this, get off the couch. And she said, it was so good because it got me up and it got me moving. And preparing for birth is, a physical thing. It's not just you're sitting there. I talk to them about how, how they're currently sitting and what the angle of their pelvis is doing. And so it's a very interactive way of teaching, but also that's not how everyone learns. So then it's downloadables, then they get a book, then they get, I've sort of catered to all the different types of learning.
The completion rates, I'm hoping they're very high.
Yeah. What I will say is our completion rates are very high, and we've just gone to our next level, in terms of tech, where we can do reporting. And it currently sits for the last, I think it was the last 42 people that signed up, because that's when that's when our software changed that we're able to do reporting. Because we're now selling into corporates, they want to know what the completion rate is. That's really important for them in terms of if they're going to be paying for the product. It sits at the low 70s. 70%, it's amazing. But remember, they're paying for it. Yes. So I acknowledge this with the corporates, once you gift something to someone, the completion rate drops dramatically. These people are pulling their credit card out currently, paying $300 for my product, and also it's time critical. You can't put off watching your childbirth education videos till next year, or next month, because it's not going to be of any benefit. Whereas a weight loss program or an exercise program, people are going to be able to go, I'm just not going to start that this month, I'm going to finish it next month. So that's quite unique in terms of my market. Pardon?
Are you running them in cohorts? So everyone who's maybe due
No, we're not.
Are you looking at doing it?
We're looking at that in terms of exploring the membership model. So what we need to do now, our clients, and again, this is kind of getting into that nitty-gritty of business, but I think that's important, our clients are one-off members. So in terms of our lifetime value, it's very limited. So we're looking at exploring a more of a membership type model, and then what we do know from everything that we collect is we have their due date. So then it would be appropriate to say 2 weeks after, hey, how you going? I'd like to introduce this. Or we do baby and child first aid face-to-face in Tamworth, and I definitely am exploring how to do that online. But again, as an emergency nurse, I think it's really important that parents feel how to do the compressions for the resuscitation. How we get around that, I'm not sure yet.
Because there's a lot of data around putting, a lot of the big online platforms are now taking people through cohorts because they're getting much higher completion rates. And you get a sense
doing it together.
You have first trimester, second trimester, third trimester.
Yeah.
Potentially, everyone in that space learns at the same time together.
We're looking at doing it in seasons. So there's lots of mums Facebook groups, and I've reached out to them. There's one called Mums Grapevine, where they lump everyone in a season. So like spring mums, so we could have spring birth beat babies, summer birth beat babies. The problem is we're also looking for international growth. So how do you then manage that? So it's yeah, I was going to say, that's right. Yes, Zach.
You worked in the health industry for 19 years, obviously a subject matter expert. Can you tell people something that surprised you and challenged your assumptions that you in this process? So you obviously went out there with some inertia based on your subject matter expertise. Can you tell us how your assumptions changed and how that shaped your business based on actual user experience and user feedback and things that just, wow, really surprised you that were not how you intended?
Yeah,
to go?
I think, and again, this sort of probably says something about my, I was really worried how the online engagement would work, again, because years of being a midwife and really, truly believing that face-to-face was the best. And now my assumptions have been challenged. Where I'm challenged now is educating everyone else that online is really working in this space because of the feedback that I'm getting from women. Like the feedback that we're getting that this didn't exist. Like I got an email just the other day from someone who lived between Forbes and Cowra. It was not an option for them. They're hand feeding at the moment, so that, you know, there's a significant drought in regional Australia. They're not able to leave their property for more than 24 hours. They're feeding in the morning, they're feeding in the evening. And again, like I'm getting into the technical, but she laboured confidently at home, arrived at the hospital at 8 centimetres dilated, birthed her baby 2 hours later. Like for me to be able to go that this automation, like, and it's all automated. I'd never spoken to this woman because I went back through all her history to see if we'd had a phone call, to see if she'd needed extra support, to see if I'd provided her with anything extra. Her and I had never actually spoken or interacted. She just consumed the automated online product. But that, to show that's challenged my assumptions, to show that it absolutely does and can work. Where I'm going to be challenged is then educating, and like this is trailblazing stuff. Like it doesn't really exist yet. The assumption is that you have to go to hospital to prepare for birth. So educating the greater market is going to be where I'm going to face my biggest challenge, I think, Zach.
And so after our workshop, let's say a year ago,
yeah.
So the rest of the day we're all going to be spending doing stuff around user-centric design, user research, exploration of our customer and value proposition. Yep. Can you say something about how, did that help you in some way? Did shifting your focus to the user first instead of always relying on your subject matter expertise, did that help shape what's happened in the last year?
Yeah, I think also for me after that session, like a big part of my messaging, and Lauren actually helped this with me as well, was I was all about it's evidence-based, you know, this is what's really, because that was what's really important to me as a health professional. Consumers don't give a rat's about being evidence-based. They want to know that it's convenient, that they can do it in their trackies in the evening on the couch. Do you know what I mean? It was sort of talking, and what I did is I then went back to all my women, because I talked to them a lot, and I said, what is it that you love about BirthBeat? Not one of them are going to come back to you and say, oh, it was great because it was evidence-based. You know, like that assumption that it's so important to me as a clinician, because when you're marketing, that was like one of my biggest things in terms of marketing. So now, like, I think about who I'm talking to. I was down talking to a bunch of obstetricians. You know, we've got this group in Australia and New Zealand called RANZCOG, sitting at a round table with all these obstetricians. They want to know about evidence-based. My consumers, like my women, when we're talking about marketing and things like that, the marketing was real, and sort of my public messaging was where my assumptions were really challenged there, which is good.
So on that basis,
yes.
What message is the one which has garnered the most attraction or attention of customers or your customers? What message?
What I can say, like in terms of, so we've only done very limited using social media basically, but our highest click-through rates, you know, the line that really seems to, we are the one-stop shop for preparing for pregnancy and birth. One-stop shop seems to, because everyone wants easy, convenient, able to access. Yeah. I know it's funny, isn't it, that I can say evidence-based to, pardon? Yeah.
You've got to test.
Yeah, absolutely.
The assumption is you don't know the answer.
And again, like everyone says in social media that videos, you know, are the best in terms of advertising. That's not the case for me, you know. So like it's just test, 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 test. Yeah. Yes, sorry.
Sorry,
Great.
did you start with that price? Since you've been online?
Yeah, so the price is a big one and very contentious, because $297 for 8 hours of content and able to follow up with me. A lot of people, particularly when I was going through the program, were saying it's too cheap. People are going to look at that and say, you know, you can't possibly get prenatal yoga, a full antenatal class and breastfeeding support for $297. I haven't tested that yet.
Okay.
And to be honest, it's more about what sits with me. $297 is still a heck of a lot of money in regional Australia. And I guess that's where my heart really is in regional, rural and remote Australia. I don't want it to be an exclusive product. I don't want it to be $997 and just women, you know, on the North Shore can afford it in Sydney. But I do also need to explore, you know, like it's okay to make money, remember? Like that sort of remembering that if we're making more money, then how do we look at counter and sort of offering it to other people? What we are doing, and we're looking, I won't say what organisation, but an organisation that we're talking with at the moment, that they buy one class for their staff and then they sponsor a teenager Indigenous mum in regional Australia. So that's where my vision gets to be, you know, we get success in terms of my sort of value for money. For 5 years, and again, like for BirthBeat, I felt like I had to hide the fact because I didn't want to show people that I was giving it to free to others. I volunteered for 5 years in Tamworth with a group called Young and Keen, so they're teenage mums, and another group called Gomeroi. And we have supported Indigenous and teenage mums for the last 5 years. We're now going to promote that fact. Like, why is that something that I have felt like I shouldn't show? And, you know, so that then people can look at potentially, if you've got the money, you know, and you want to, you can buy one for you, and then you can buy one for someone else who's potentially not able to pay the $297. So that's what we're exploring at the moment.
297 is a very tried and tested number in North
Yes.
America. We start at 997.
Yeah.
Basically what I charge in mine for 7 hours is
Yeah.
the same. 997 is basically, if you're foolish enough to pay 997, but if you watch the webinars, you do the intros, it's 297, and it gives you the opportunity to upsell other
Yeah.
products or memberships or referrals or special interest. And what it means is you get volume.
Yeah.
You sell it at $1,000, you're not going to get the same
Yeah.
level of capacity.
And it's again so good for me. I need to keep challenging my assumptions around this, because even though I'm saying you've got to be okay with getting paid, I'm still probably not 100% comfortable. So it's about my own journey. Like, even when you're going upsell, I'm like, I don't want to upsell to these women, but I have to get over that, essentially. I know. And it's about acknowledging your own.
Because 297 is your base revenue.
Yeah.
That's your business model based on that. And then it's a question of where can we take this for people who can afford and want to learn more.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Edwina. That
No
was
worries.
fantastic. If anyone wants to ask you any more
Yeah, I'm happy to hang around.
I've
Oh.
got one question. How do you address the cultural side of things in your online practice?
Yeah, so we're already looking at putting it into another language, and that's because a private health insurance company has asked for us to put it into Mandarin, and I have said, whoa, I don't know anything about that culture, so I'm not doing that yet, but that is something that we can be looking at and exploring. With our Indigenous culture in Australia, as I said, I have worked very closely with these women for 5 years. What we have now is not appropriate. So we are doing research. That is why I'm doing the face-to-face classes. Even if you look at my website, and the other day I was presenting to the Aboriginal Mothers Service in Tamworth, and I'm really proud of my website. It's really new, and I put it up, and it was so good. And this is like, it's okay to be challenged. It's okay for people to say things, and just, it's not that you've got it wrong. It just means that you need to do better or improve. And the comment was, it's pretty white. And it's so true. Like I for years have been passionate about making sure that we support Indigenous women in my community. And then I've got this website that is so damn white bread. And my sister's married to a Korean fellow, and that night I rang her all upset, and I said, I can't believe that. I can't believe that I didn't see that. And she said, yeah, there's also no Asians on your website. And I was like, why didn't you tell me this? Like, you saw the beta. And she said, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. So I was like, hurt my feelings. But also, like, I was devastated about that night, Jane. I was embarrassed. I was devastated. I was Googling, trying to find photos, contacting birth photographers. That's how I got onto Kate. And we all have the same problem, but we can do better. It's just like, just work out a way, find a way. So now I'm talking to the Aboriginal Mothers Service. We're going to get some photos. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's not that you've got it wrong. You've never failed if you keep trying. That's the thing. And I guess it's very easy to go, oh God, how embarrassing, I stuffed up. But that's okay. Next day, got up, I will improve.
Thank you, Edwina. That was so good.
No worries.